55% of Gen Z and millennials say social media reviews are the top reason they try a restaurant, and 73% have visited a restaurant in the last 3 months because of one. Do you have timely reviews working for you? Quick-turn influencer review campaigns from Bell Communication can fill tables fast. Visit bellcommunication.com/influence to learn more.
Welcome to Takeaway with Sam Oches, a podcast for leaders of growing restaurant companies looking to take their businesses to the next level. In nearly 2 decades covering restaurants, I've gained access to some of the industry's most influential decision makers, and I'm letting you in on the conversations. In today's episode, you'll hear from a veteran restaurant executive who successfully navigated 2 restaurant chains through bankruptcy at the same time, and you'll get the inside scoop on what exactly that process entails. Mark Cote is CEO of both Wild Wing Café and Backyard Burgers, which are owned by the Charlotte, North Carolina-based Axum Capital Partners. Mark served one stint as an exec at Wild Wing Café a decade ago and then was recruited to come back and serve as CEO of both brands in 2022. Very quickly, he determined that they would need to close several restaurants and shortly after opted to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection at both chains, a process that each brand emerged from after 2 years. Mark joined the podcast to talk about the bankruptcy process, how to prepare for it, what it looks like, and why there's reason for optimism even when it seems like the sky is falling. If you learn anything from this episode, go follow Takeaway wherever you're listening and leave some feedback. It is the best way to get that lesson to a fellow restaurant leader. Jumping now into my interview with Mark Cote of Wild Wing Café and Backyard Burgers. Also, don't forget to stick around after the interview as I will share my 6 takeaways from this discussion, actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. Okay, sitting down with Mark Cote, the CEO of Wild Wing Café and Backyard Burgers. Mark, thanks for taking some time today.
Thanks. I really appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So, Mark, it's been an eventful couple of years for you, and we're going to get into that. Lots to learn in your story, and I'm really excited and appreciative that you're here to tell the story. But to set you up for that story, we got to get into your past and how you got into this restaurant industry. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Oh my goodness. I went to college to become. I always wanted to be an FBI agent. Somewhere on an intersection, I went a different path. Left school, headed to Alaska to gold mine, and came back and said, I got to get doing what I used to do when I was a kid. And I love the restaurant business. So having been a busboy and a waiter, like a lot of us started in this business, had the opportunity to go with my first professional restaurant group, so to speak. And that was in the days when Darden was called General Mills Restaurant Group.
Oh, sure.
And I was with York Steakhouse Systems. It was kind of on the idea of a Ponderosa Bonanza back then. And we had probably 140 something stores, and slowly but surely they went away. At the time, General Mills was trying to, I think, double the size of Red Lobster and open up their new concept called the Olive Garden. So the rest was history. Went to 10 years there, 10 years at Friendly Ice Cream, 3 years at a New England-based group, Papagino's D'Angelo's. About 300, 400 restaurants in the New England area. Then I got a great opportunity first time on the franchise side to go with Panera Bread, franchisee Boston Bread that owns Boston Bread and Chicago Bread for Panera Bread. Great organization. My wife got me to move to Charlotte, which was awesome. She worked for a global company at the time and hooked up with Salsaritas, Fresh Mexican Cantina down here, Wild Wing Cafe, Zaxby's. And hence, I have my second tour at Wild Wing Café. So here I am.
Wow. I mean, that is quite a tour. And you've hit QSR, fast casual, full service. I mean, you've learned a lot. You've kind of done it all. What would you say is your favorite part about being in the restaurant industry with all these experiences? What's your wheelhouse, would you say?
Well, to me, it's just the people, right? If I couldn't get out of this office on the 11th floor and just get to a restaurant, love talking with the guests. I mean, in the employees. In fact, a lot of direction that I got for our upcoming growth and stuff, and who we show up as for our customers as a brand, both brands, is really coming from my conversations with team members bartenders, servers, managers, because I learned a long time ago, there's no hot dogging it in this world. It's not a one-person show. You need to
Hmm.
really just shut up sometime and listen, but ask the right questions and then listen.
Yeah.
That and probably coupled with the opportunity, which I mentioned earlier on the franchise side. So one thing I've learned about the restaurant business is if you can get to the point where people maybe see something in you and give you an opportunity. I was in ops for about 12 years before I was then thrown into HR. Then I was thrown into training, and then I ran the supply chain at Salsaritas as part of a COO responsibility. So it seems like in the restaurant business, if you're willing to learn new things, there are people that want to develop you because, like my whole dream team, I can tell you about them later, but my
Hmm.
whole dream team are multidimensional. They have done HR ops and training, or they have more than just one discipline that they are a SME of. And that's what I love about the restaurant business is the education, the development, but again, people.
Yeah. You're the third or fourth person who has said in the past month to me this notion of the importance of doing everything in the restaurant business. That if you're in finance, don't just put your head down and do finance. Go do some marketing, do some
Sure.
operations, get into supply chain. And those people who do that tend to become the great leaders of this industry. It sounds like that's the career you had too.
Yeah, I've been blessed. I've had like the best mentors in my life. And, everybody that you come across, certainly, and if they're above you on the ladder, below you, across from you, whatever, you're always going to learn from those people. And you have to be willing, I certainly don't know it all. In fact, if I hired everybody that had my skill set, would probably fail miserably because you need to really build that team or surround yourself with people that are better than you are at what they do. You need to be good at what you do, but you really need to make sure that you've got the right group of people and people that understand the diversity of opinion or that understand the other discipline because they might have been involved with it somewhere in their career.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get to your first stint at Wild Wing Cafe. Tell me about that time. How long were you with Wild Wing Cafe the first time around? What was your impression of the brand? What was the potential of the brand at the time?
Well, thanks. It was the first time that I'd really been since I was a waiter when I was 18. First time I had a chance to get back into a job that had alcohol in it, right? So that was fairly new to me. I was hired as the VP of HR and training at that time by the then CEO, great guy. And within probably about a month or two, he asked me if I would take over operations. And I said, sure, but can I please keep HR and training? And he said, sure. So I did that I just love the experience of Wild Wing Cafe. It's very easy to fall in love with the brand, as many people have over our 35 years this year,
Nice.
that we have since we were born on Hilton Head.
Mm.
And it's just been a great, it's a fun atmosphere. I mean, with a slogan of hot wings, cold beer, and good times, it's really, really cool. I mean, a lot of places have hot wings. We have 31 plus flavors, and we've won more awards, I think, than probably anybody else. We have cold beer. A lot of places have cold beer, right? But we want to make sure that we're kind of local in what we have and what's the most popular. But the thing that really separates us, besides our fantastic wings and the that beverage area, is also the good times. And we have at least four good times every week. Some stores do karaoke, some stores do music trivia, some stores do voice off. But every store on Friday and Saturday has live entertainment, and it's just such a cool place to be. I learned a long time ago that people, it's a experience. It's not just can I get
Mhm.
something to eat. People want to go out. Well, they like convenience too. We can talk about that, but it's really that want to go out and what's the experience like. And if the
Mhm.
experience is like I can have great food, they're served by great people in a great atmosphere, that I can be social, that I can actually, get out there and experience something more than just eat and run. It is really, really cool. And that's what I like most about Wild Wing Cafe.
Yeah. Oh, and you mentioned convenience. I mean, I imagine then COVID was a tough time for Wild Wing Cafe because of that notion of good times experiences, being there at the restaurant to have those experiences. how has this brand, I mean, COVID or no COVID, how has the brand adapted to this reality that today increasingly consumers want something delivered or picked up? But, they'll also tell you they want those great experiences. How has Wild Wing Cafe managed to find, kind of put a foot on both sides of that?
Well, thanks. We've been blessed that we've had guests that have been around for the 35 years, right?
Hmm.
And as we have evolved, and since I returned, and just kind of asking people, I wasn't here during COVID. I was with another brand, and who happened to do really great because they had drive-throughs right during COVID. But you're absolutely right. I mean, super strong headwinds with COVID, and it made everybody think about what do we do now, and then how can we serve our guests without them coming into our restaurant, and then people picked up behaviors because of that, and we get out of COVID, and it's convenience, it's third party. It's almost like people don't care how much it costs to get that convenience third party delivery, but they do. I mean, they do order, right?
Hmm.
So they really love that. I mean, my kids certainly older, but they order all the time, and I don't know what it costs, but they just order. So it's really that convenience thing and we've got some great plans coming up for how we're going to grow is somewhat of a hybrid of a Wild Wing Cafe legacy restaurant. That's what I call it, that we know
Mm.
today. It could be anywhere from, in the day. I mean, I had a restaurant, Wild Wing, that was 15,000 square feet, had an
Wow.
upstairs. I mean, you don't do that anymore. You used
No.
to do it, but you don't do it anymore. So, our team has talked about how we, probably shrink the size down to 4,500 square feet for a legacy. But then we're also really getting excited to go to the what people are looking for today, and that's that convenience. And our Wild Wing to go is going to be really cool, right? When we're dealing with 1,000 to 1,500 square feet at the
Hmm.
most. And so reduce your square footage, reduce the economics on it in terms of what it costs you. The labor model is absolutely fantastic. You can serve, probably our menu would be cut down to about probably 50% of what we do today in a legacy restaurant, but it's all the stuff that people crave all the time, and they can just order it. So it's really going to be, my guesstimation, first restaurant, 75 to 80% third party, all to
Hmm.
go, may have a table, may not, and I think that's going to be a part of our growth process going forward. Still legacy, but
Yeah.
part of our growth process going forward will be our Wild Wing to go.
Okay. All right. We're going to get into that growth, but we got to get into the last couple of years. And really, one of the reasons why you're back here at Wild Wing Cafe and Backyard Burgers, which is that a couple of years ago, you get a phone call to come back and to navigate this company, these brands through bankruptcy. What was your impression when you got that phone call? What was your first thought about all of that?
Well, first I thought it was a butt dial, but when they call back, I picked up. And I said, and they just said, would you ever consider coming back? And I said, why? What is the need? Because I'm not going to come back to a role that I can't do.
Hmm.
Again, integrity is number one to me. So, I mean, I just to be honest, whether it looked good for me or didn't look good for me, I really need to make sure that I felt I had the skill set, and I knew exactly what I was walking into. And of course, people may not explain everything to you, right? But they're pretty transparent. I love Axum Capital Partners, great organization to work for. So, got an opportunity to come back, and I took the first 2 months and really just said, okay, what do I have here? And, I'm going through P&Ls and looking at it, 16 corporate restaurants, and then what the franchise community had. And, finally said, you know what, I think we can do this. We're going to have to put a plan together because, again, plan your work and work your plan. And so we put a plan together, and I hated to be the bearer of bad news, but basically said, I think we're going to have to close approximately 10 restaurants. And
Hmm.
I don't know if I surprise people by saying that, but I mean,
Hmm.
it's just the data's the data's the data, right?
Hmm.
And so we went ahead, I mean, and did that starting in December of 22. So I started in September of 22. By December, we started that. But in the meantime, I really had to put together a team. I've learned a long time ago, thanks to my mentors, that you can't walk into any sort of battle or celebration unless you have a team. And,
Mm,
I've just been blessed that I can call people up and, for whatever reason, they say, okay, when do you need me there by? And then we talk about pay later. It's
yeah.
just really, really cool. And so we put together that plan, and this team really worked through it. And the end of the day, ended up having a shared services team. So with no more office in Nashville for Backyard Burgers, we have our office here, and every one of my folks in this office are, two brands, but one team support team.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how we've been working that. And then coming to the realization that we had to go ahead and file, because that wasn't our first plan. Our first plan was, how can we do this outside of court? And at
Hmm.
the end of the day, just couldn't get that done that way. So we went to the plan B, so to speak, and then we filed.
Yeah, lots to unpack there. And I guess I would start with, you come back into the Wild Wing Cafe business and you see right off the bat, you got to close 10 restaurants. As you saw it, what would you diagnose as being the problem with Wild Wing Cafe? Obviously, sales, I'm sure then, as you say, the data is the data. But why do you think it was in that position?
I really think that the major catastrophe, so to speak, was COVID, right? I mean, when I left in, let me see, 2017, 20 into 2018, I left, and I wasn't in the CEO position. Don't get me wrong, but we were doing well. I mean, we were double digit EBITDA. We were running comps that you could be proud of, restaurants that we were happy with. I'm not saying that every restaurant is a perfect performer. You always have your top gun and you have your bottom, but is the bottom acceptable, right? I mean, there's a
Hmm.
minimum expectation that I have for financial results, just like I have with the performance of people. And if it's got to be at least at that minimum. So we went through that, and but boy, when COVID hit, and I thought about Wild Wing Cafe. I'm saying, "Oh my God, what are they doing? The governor just said this, or you can't do this," and all of the
Hmm.
restrictions for all the right reasons. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying, how how are they doing? How are they surviving that? And I know they went into my understanding, again, wasn't here, that they went ahead and did the curbside pickup at anything and everything that we can do. But at Wild Wing Cafe, people love to come in and experience it, right? But the bars were empty. All the seats were empty, no fannies in the seats, so to speak. The dining room was closed, to go only. I mean, and you just wrap that for even month after month after month, and pretty soon it's hard to catch up.
Hmm. Yeah. All right. So then you come back. Backyard Burgers, I want to ask about that too, because that was a brand you had not been a part of before. So, as that is, as you mentioned, part of Axum Capital Partners, a part of their portfolio. So, this is another brand that you have oversight over. What was your impression of that brand when you came in?
Well, I couldn't believe them when I'd had the food for the first time. I mean, it was just awesome. Great burgers. It is, uh, certainly. Quick service, which I had experienced before I came back to Wild Wing Cafe. I resigned from a great opportunity I had at Zaxby's. And Zaxby's is a great company and kind of a role model. And I learned a lot about drive through that I had not known before in my 3 years there.
Mm,
So I had the pleasure of learning that. And so when I having the opportunity, I know about drive throughs, man. It's all about throughput,
mm,
and keeping it going, right? And cars not leaving the queue. And how do you line bust? And having the tablets outside, things we certainly have competitors that do that, right? So we've started to really pick up on all of that stuff. And, I think it's a much easier brand to learn than Wild Wing Cafe is. Wild Wing Cafe just had full service, the bar, the sports bar, the TVs, the entertainment, where Backyard Burgers are great product. We just got to keep them coming through, right? So
yeah.
I didn't know a lot about it, but I had to study up and learn real quick, because 3 weeks later I was in court.
I mean, so Wild Wing Cafe. When I think about why it was struggling, it makes a little bit more sense than with Backyard Burgers. Here's a drive-through burger brand, which for the most part, burger QSRs were able to get through COVID relatively well, better than a lot, right? Because
Uh-huh.
they had the drive through. As you diagnose backyard burgers, I mean, well, I guess I should actually ask you this question. You have two brands in a portfolio. Is it possible for one of them to go through bankruptcy and the other one to be squeaky clean? I mean, and I'm asking because I really don't know. Like, or are their burdens kind of shared because you have shared services? How
No,
does that work?
yeah, I almost wish that we had a situation where only one of them had to go in, right? But both of
Hmm.
them had to go in. There was no, in order to secure the future. And my thought has always been is like, why do you want to, why did I want to come back? And I wanted to come back and be a part of some sort of legacy where we secured the future for both brands that were financially in trouble or whatever the reasons were. Let's admit, COVID was not a good thing for anybody out there. Anytime I see another group before we filed, before I came back, and even now, whenever I hear about brands getting ready to file or go through this, man, I feel for them. We're one industry, right? We learn from each other all of the time. And to have so many different diverse type of brands out there that do different things. I tell you something, I don't wish anything on anybody like that. But I know that, like one of my decisions of coming back, because I loved Wild Wing Cafe so much. I didn't know Backyard Burgers that well. Though Axum Capital Partners did got Backyard Burgers while I was still here the first time. I just
Hmm.
wasn't involved with it. But really, we wanted to save the brands for the employees that we have, the guests that we have, the franchisees that we have, the vendors that we have, the banks that we have, and ownership, right? And I mean, who would want it not to work out, right? And that's one thing I really liked about the process. If there was something to like about the filing process, is one, there's an opportunity for future, maybe, right? I don't know how many brands go in and how many brands come out, but I think that I like our winning percent so far. And then I would say that you know just being able to secure that future means so much to so many people, and nobody in that process wants you to fail. That's what I got out of it. It wasn't this group versus this group or whatever. It's just about, is the plan feasible? Is it
Hmm.
sustainable? Is Can there be a future? Because nobody wants you to come back in, right?
Hmm.
So I think that we were able to prove that for both brands, and hopefully we see a really super great future.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you some questions here that probably seem kind of stupid, but having never navigated a brand through bankruptcy, I'm just genuinely very curious, and I think a lot of our audience is going to be curious about this too. Just getting into the nuts and bolts of this process, because again, I think if you're just a casual follower of business and retail or restaurants, and you see so and so files for bankruptcy, which we've had a lot of that of recently. Of course, you've had high profile ones like Red Lobster, TGI Fridays. You and I are talking on the heels of Iron Hill, company out of Philadelphia that's filed for bankruptcy. You see this, and I think if you don't know anything about it, you just think bankruptcy is, well, they failed, they closed, they go away. And obviously, it's not that. But let's start with the beginning. When do you know you have to file for bankruptcy? When is it the only option?
Well, I think, it's just looking at the numbers, the books, right? I mean, you can close restaurants, but that doesn't make things go away, right? It's just like kind of like what you just said, right? So, what's the best way, I guess, and this group, this team, the ownership have a lot of integrity. We've built a lot of relationships with our vendors over the years. Any company I've been with, but we're talking about these two right now, and you don't want anybody to get hurt in the process. But at the end of the day, if it looks like you just might not be able to open the doors a month, 2 months, 3 months from now, I mean, and just no one to call it a day, that's when it's time to go the other route, right?
Mhm.
And so, filing was the best thing we could do to secure a win for as many people as possible.
Sure. I know there's chapter 11, there's chapter 7. Chapter 11, obviously the most common. This is really getting the nitty-gritty, but then like how do you know which bankruptcy filing to do?
Well, I think they're all defined out, right? And certainly we knew that filing Chapter 11 was the way to go. I mean, this wasn't just okay. Let's go to court tomorrow. I mean, there
Right.
was a lot of pre-work and meeting with people, bankruptcy attorneys, financial advisors. That hey, this is our situation. Here's the books. What do you think? And kind of like relying on them and ourselves to do our homework that, is this the way to go? And is it now?
Mhm.
How soon? And then how long does it take? Like, I mean, when no fooling over 2 years for both brands, but there are some companies that are in it for years and years and years. And oh my God, my heart goes out to them because it's
Mhm.
not, you're going in the bankruptcy process. It's not cheap.
Right.
It's not cheap, right? So, and everybody, that's business. Everybody makes their money and stuff like that, but it's not cheap. And, I guess deciding to go was just a commitment that we wanted a future.
Yeah, you mentioned that this was a 2-year process, which surprised me. I never really realized that it could be that long of a process. Why does it take so long to get through something like bankruptcy?
I think there's just so much to it. I mean, there's you as a company, the day you file, and then it's like, okay, how do we, so today you may not have to pay that bill from yesterday, right? At some point, it's a part of the plan going forward about how everything pans out at the end. But it's really a matter of you went back and you talked about the 2 different brands, right? And both having to go and said, "Well, one's drive-through, well, one wasn't," right? And how does that I don't think anybody could ever say it's 100% because of COVID,
Hmm.
right? It's just about, I think it's a lot about, leadership. It's a lot about, decisions we make as a team, that's some work out and some don't work out. Where do you spend your money? How do you grow not certainly not during the process because you really don't do that. So some people maybe a couple months into a bankruptcy. I've heard of that as well, but then there's the ones that go for 8 years, I guess. I mean, and longer. So
That's wild. Obviously, your goal, I know, is get this brand through bankruptcy. But what are some other things that are top of your mind? Are there parts of the business you especially want to protect, or do you have kind of a laundry list of I got to get out of bankruptcy with these things? What was that kind of goal mindset as you get into
well,
this
I think
process?
once we put the team together, it was really about, looking at, I when I first got back, I went and I traveled and talked to every franchisee, and I knew right out of the get go that they hadn't. I heard there wasn't a lot of communication, uh, you know, s- starting probably because of COVID and visits, that sort of consideration. And at the end of the day, I think my first 12 months, I made 50 cafe visits
Mhm.
and talking with, all the franchisees. And I knew because we might have had a disconnect in communication from what I heard that I needed to re-engage because if there's nothing like a franchisee that's engaged in that
Mhm.
they've got a lot riding on the success of the company, the success of their own operations, right? They want you to win. They want to win. But I knew that when I walked in and saw everybody, and most of the people I saw for the second time because I'd met them all before, just not in this capacity, that when I walked in and we sat down, I just went like this and said, "Okay, go for it." And just listen to them, right? And they had a lot to say. And
Yeah.
everybody's whether you agree with everything everybody says, it's their perception, and that's what you got to deal with, right? And
Yeah.
so and that's what matters, right? Because they matter. And in a lot of franchisees, especially the ones that are super engaged and really into their business, that that you got to listen to them. I mean, they have a lot of great ideas. So it
Mhm.
was doing that also as part of this inside this process is okay, what's your plan going to be? How are you going to emerge? What will a court accept? What is believable, even forgetting about the integrity, I got in my head that I want to put together a plan that's doable, right? That we can move
Hmm.
forward. And so, I did a lot of listening, and on my second tour through, I listened about 80% more of that next visit, right? And then finally be able to share some of my ideas. And they finally got around to asking, so what are your plans? Every time somebody comes in, they want to put their stamp on the company, and they want to, invent something or whatever. And I says, look, I also want to do is continue the future of this brand, be super successful, that you're happy, that you're growing, that you're filling out your development agreements, that we bring new franchisees on, and then we just broaden the base of the brand, no matter which brand it was. And I did the same thing at Backyard Burgers. And it was at that point in time, once we knew we had to close some restaurants, that we started putting, the biggest things the franchisees said was, we're not happy with this, this, and this. And the top three things of their list was, distribution, POS, and loyalty program. And it may have taken us up until about a month ago not to complete both brands changing all three of those things. Okay,
Wow.
so we've really embraced technology now, and we've gone the route that will help us secure the future and make it more economically easier. I mean, even with through the past year, we've talked about how bad chicken prices were
Yeah.
for two of those years of bankruptcy. 2 of those years we were struggling, and my prime costs have come down 5 to 6%, just because we're not paying $140 a case anymore for chicken. We're paying $70 a case, or whatever that number is. Makes a big
Hmm.
difference.
Yeah. Well, you bring up such an interesting point, which is how do you operate a business as you're going through bankruptcy? Because I imagine there's sort of a air about the company of like we're going through bankruptcy, but we still got restaurants to run. What is your advice for how you run these restaurants while simultaneously going through that process such that you can keep the existing restaurants afloat and make sure they all get out of this process intact as well?
Well, I think you have to be really cognizant of where you're at financially, who your vendors are. I think uh, something that you never want to do is lower your quality. In our cases of your chicken or your burgers or whatever the case might be, whichever brand it is, you don't want to sacrifice quality for price, right? And that, because that can do huge damage to you with your base guests from that point forward. Winning them back is extremely difficult. We had a little bit of that when I got here, and we quickly ended up changing that, so we didn't have a lack of quality because we've been known for our quality. I mean, our burgers at Backyard Burgers are just awesome. Absolutely awesome. And Wild Wing Cafe, man, I tell you, it's a good thing I'm not in a restaurant every day, because those wings are just fantastic. Can't get enough of them. But
Hmm.
I think that you really have to make sure that you know watch really closely the spend, watch the travel, even. How are we spending the money? With which vendors are we spending the money with? I mean, I added some things. I added Tattle. We didn't have a guest service feedback platform when I got
Hmm.
back, and so I had to add that. Had to add a marketing agency, because we didn't have that. So there were certain things that you had to kind of investment spend because you were going to get a high ROI on it on the other side. So I think it's really important to make sure you understand that even in those times, you might have to do some things. You might have to spend a little money, but at the end of the day, you're going to make it back tenfold. It just can't take a lot of years to make it back.
So coming out of bankruptcy, I mean, at some point you're just coming to agreements via the court process, right? Like that's how bankruptcy ends. I mean, are you satisfied? Like, do you celebrate? What does the end of this process look like?
Sam, I can't tell you how blessed and thrilled I am that we came out the other side. Even with probably my lack of knowledge going in, right? But we have an
Mm,
awesome team, and I'm not just talking about my leadership team here on both sides of my office. I kind of sit in the middle here. But Axum Capital Partners has been just amazing and supportive. And whenever I'm in need, I might go down, knock on the door, and they always are there for us. They always, obviously, we always want to make sure we're spending the way we should be spending, and we add team where we need to add team. But we needed to. This was a restructure, a regroup, a right sizing, a reorganization, but more importantly, to position ourselves that when we do emerge, we will never come back to that courtroom, right? I mean,
Yeah.
or nowhere, right? I mean, just to move on and grow. And our big, one of my favorite things about our growth as we go forward. And one thing that I had, Benedict Advertising, one of the best agencies that I've worked with, they're out of Daytona, Florida. They really got who we are, because in the middle of this, or in September of 23, we filed in June and in July, and they came on board with us. And we've had a few vendors like that despite knowing what we were in, they came on board with us. 3 of my leadership team came on board with us during that process because they believed in what we had to, the picture we're trying to paint on the canvas of what it was going to be like today,
Hmm.
and also in the future. But going around from franchisee restaurant to franchisee restaurants to corporate restaurants, and pulling those 20, 30, 40-year-old wait staff, servers, bartenders, and trying to tell them, and saying, "How can you help me?" And they saying, "What?" I said, "How can you help me?" And they said, "I'm sorry, Mark, I don't know what you're talking about." Let me tell you. I says, "We're 35 years old, and people
Hmm.
like me have been coming for 35 years. I'm also 67. But in that case, we still want Mark to come in every single day. But how do we broaden our base, right? How do we broaden our base? How do we really attract more of the 20s, 30s, and 40s? And we did a
Hmm.
lot of homework on this, a lot of research on this. And at the end of the day, it wasn't a problem with our menu, according to all of our people. Wasn't so much, could some of our restaurants use a little bit of a remodel? Yes, and we're working on that. In fact, I have another meeting this Friday. But it was really around this social thing, right? People today, of the 20s, 30s, and 40s, don't want to just necessarily go into a restaurant, just a regular restaurant, eat and leave, or even a sports bar, and go in and sit there and just watch TV for 2 hours. There's got to be more to it to broaden our base. They want that socialness to it. Give you an example.
Yeah.
Anderson, one of our biggest restaurants right now, 3 corporate restaurants. Our biggest corporate restaurant doesn't do as much as our big gun up in Magnolia, Greenville, South Carolina, but just down the road a piece, about a half hour. Older restaurant. We always have kept it up. Added some soft seating, which people, it's just like every Friday, Saturday night, those are the seats that fill up first, right? Real comfortable seating and everything right in front of the stage. And we put we have our cornholes, we have our dartboard lanes, and just a lot of fun stuff for people to do more than just pull up a chair. Right? People don't
Hmm.
sometimes want to sit at those small tables. They want to sit at the high top tables. They want to sit in soft seating. So we added that. Do you know, Sam, that of the past 52 weeks, and it's all about people too, we had a new general manager in there about 56 weeks ago, and he has run 47 weeks positive, most of it double digits.
Wow.
Okay.
Good for him.
Unbelievable. So that's where, again, all goes back to people.
Yeah. Well, and so we're about to turn our attention here now to the future, but just to kind of put a bow on this bankruptcy process, Mark, what advice do you have for people who are finding themselves in this position? Because again, we've had several bankruptcy filings this year in the restaurant industry. I have to imagine with the state of the economy, we're probably heading for more. For anybody who doesn't know what they're getting themselves into and they're getting caught up in this process now, what are just some simple things that they can remember ahead of that?
Well, I mean, get your wagons right in a circle, right? Make sure that you have everything that you think you need to have going through that process. I mean, your historical information, the past few years, where in that case you saw a downtrend, right? Because you didn't see an uptrend. So what do the numbers look like? And if I continue this trend, where is it going to take me? It's in most cases, it's not going to take you to a future. Right. So it's really getting all of that information in place. There is a lot of information that is requested. and asked for through this process, whether it be the creditors committee, whether it be the senior lender, whether it be the court bankruptcy administrator, or whoever it is, there's a lot of people involved. And different people ask for different things, but at the end of the day, they probably cover everything over that time period. And just making sure you be extremely organized in files that are sent, things that are asked for. And then there are a lot of reports that happen on a monthly basis that you have to pass in, even for a few months post emergence, that you have to
Mm.
pass in. So it's really making sure that you're committed as well. If you decide to go this, you better, strap in, hang on, because it's going to be a ride. It can be challenging. It can be even maybe a little intimidating. Not that people make you feel that way, it's the process. But knowing
Yeah.
that you might not emerge, but at the end of the day, it's rewarding. I can tell you that for a fact. It's rewarding.
Oh, that's great. All right, so we got to talk about the future then, because here you've emerged. You've brought two brands through bankruptcy. Like you said, two went in, two came out. You've got a future ahead of you. Obviously, some things are inevitably have changed because of this process. Um, but what else do you do to set these brands up for success now that you're through the bankruptcy process? Do you retool the whole thing, or what does that look like now that you're trying to set these up for a healthier future?
Well, first of all, you got to stay true to who you are, right? People that try to be everything to everybody and trying to steal away, I guess, guests from other places because they offer pizza and you don't, or whatever the case might be. I do not recommend that whatsoever. Be true to who you are. Wild Wing
Hmm.
Cafe is a wing place. Pure and simple. Backyard burgers, it's burgers. Sure, we have other things on the menu, but that's basically who we are going forward. And again, while you're going through this process, my advice is to be committed to a positive outcome, right? So the team has spent the past 2 years just thinking about where do we go the day they cut the ribbon and we run out of the courtroom and we start going like heck now, right? Because it's so much fun thinking about growth and high-fiving and having passion and fun and teamwork and everybody being motivated because you're once again going forward. So Backyard Burgers, for example, our VP of Construction and Facilities, Howard Allen, who I've worked with in 3 different companies now, he and I went down to Backyard Burgers and we took a tour. Our people wanted their restaurants to be not when their restaurants to be remodeled, wanted some newness to it. They were old, they were tired, and that might be part of the reason why we got into where we were, right? But as soon as we, back in March 1st, we emerged from Backyard Burgers. Uh, Axum Capital Partners, as always, was right there and says, "You wanted to remodel, Mark? How much is it going to cost?" We gave them a number. They gave us the funds, and we remodeled from uh, April, May, and a little bit of June. And since then, we've been 17% up. We went from double
Wow.
digit decrease to 17% up every single week. I mean, 12 and a half,
Wow.
24% up. But we netted out 17. And we only had, when we reopened or we were done the refresh, we did the inside first, never do the outside first, because they'll come in and say, "Oh, wow, this looks really like a cool building," and come into the old thing, right? So we did the inside
Hmm.
first, and then we did the outside, and the reaction has been unbelievable. Sam, we were down in Memphis. My leadership team, there's 4 or 5 of us there, and we had our Backyard Burger shirts on, and then we're checking out some of the competition, and then we just went out to eat to this place. Do you know that 3 of the place at 3 different times, 3 different places, people got up from their table that saw our logo in Memphis and said, "You guys with Backyard Burgers, are you coming back?" And we says, "Coming back? You bet we're coming back. Can you reopen this? Can you reopen that?" And we've had great landlords over the years and stuff. And we have talked to a couple about reopening, and that would
Hmm.
also be another way for the growth to happen. But we will open 2 Backyard Burgers corporate over the next 12 months. We have a great franchisee. We have great franchisees, period, but a great one also down in Florida, Altamont Springs, that has a double drive-through, no dining room, and he just knocks it out of the park. Who is opening one and building it right now? Be open in November, right outside of Walt Disney World. That thing is just going to hop. And then on the Wild Wing Cafe side, I mean, the plans have been, to go ahead and we'll have 2 legacy new restaurants in the next 12 months, 2 Wild Wing to goes in the next 12 months, and our franchisees at the last convention. We got the FACT committee going again a couple years ago, so they have their opinions that they share with us 3 or 4 times a year. We had our annual convention last April, and when we showed them Wild Wing to go, I can't tell you how many said, How soon before we can sign up?" They just
Mm,
loved it because the footprint, the economics, and it will help support their legacy unit that they have in other parts of their own territory. So it's just
yeah.
going to be, we're just so excited about the growth.
Yeah, well, you bring up an interesting point too around customers, which is your customers probably don't know you're going through the bankruptcy process, right?
Mhm.
Unless they're Googling your brand before they come. And even then, they're probably not stumbling into that news. So they just have the expectation of great food, great service, like any other restaurant, But now coming out of this, I mean, I'm just curious, like what is the mindset around serving the consumer through a process like this, and now out of it? How do you meet that moment for the customer and ensure that no matter what, they're getting that same great experience?
Yeah, I think that as they see us grow, and we have some extremely loyal guests. I mean, and I think that if they have a chance to go to, we'll talk a lot about it because we communicate with our guests too in our restaurants. I mean, in fact, when in all of the restaurants, be it Wild Wing Cafe or Backyard Burger, if you go in, you'll see a picture of the general manager and a commitment that they have to the guest experience when the guest comes in. It's amazing the relationship building that happens if you let it happen, if you want it to happen, right? To connect,
Hmm.
table touches. Oh my God, I don't care if it's Backyard Burgers or Wild Wing Cafe. There's nothing better than table touches. People will give you free information and advice if you're willing to listen to it, right? So,
Hmm.
in what they would like to see, or what's their favorite sauce, right? I'm not the CEO. I'm outside my door says sauce boss, right? I mean, not into titles. Love the menu, the experience, and I think that guests see that when guests are coming in, like in Anderson now, for the past year, they're not thinking about bankruptcy. They're thinking about, hey, Stephen Cooper's a general manager there now, and he just knocks it out of the park. He's at the front door. He comes around to the tables and he talks. People love knowing who the boss is, right? I know
Right.
when my wife and I go out to eat, we go to some places that the food's pretty good, but we go for the experience because when we walk to the door, they say, "Hey, Mark and Helena, how are you?" And
Hmm.
and that makes me step on my tippy toes. They might have said it to every other customer. I don't care. They said it to me. So
Yeah.
I think it's about relationship building with your vendors, your franchisees, your employees, your past employees, because you never know when people will come back, and then your guests, right? Because you need to
Right.
get that frequency up.
All right, Mark, last question for you. Going through this process now with two brands, you're on the other side of it. You've got a new day dawning, right? Like you've got a bright future ahead for these two brands with this in the rearview mirror. How would you say this process changed the brands and the direction you're taking them? But also, how do you think it changed you as a leader?
Oh, great question. Again, never having experienced this before in my life, I'm kind of probably in the twilight of my career. But I would have been all done at 65, but decided that I really loved the challenge. And if we emerged, how much I would enjoy being a part of the leadership team that brings it to the next level. And I don't know. It's the legacy thing, right? Legacy is my sixth and final core value, and at the end of the day, I've never been the best at anything, but I am pretty good at a couple things, and so it's really like wanting to see what happens. I want to pass Backyard Burgers someday, 5 years from now, whatever it may be, and Wild Wing Cafe into the hands. And what's in their hands is something that's growing, it's vibrant, it's happy, it's not dull, it's not, people aren't going through the court process. And so the challenge right now isn't bankruptcy. The challenge right now is that strategic forward thinking, which we've been doing for 2 years to get ready for this, hoping we would. We did. The plan's here. We're ready to just go ahead and grow. And the Wild Wing to goes, we'll be the first ones to open it, obviously, as we should, get the kinks out of it, make it right, make it affordable, make it attractive. And I want to be a franchisor. I don't want to have, 10 million restaurants. I want to be a franchisor that other people own the restaurants and their franchisees for us, right? And we have to be good at what we do. And being a good franchisor is something we continue to strive to be at. It takes a while, especially coming out of what we did. But at the end of the day, I just want to be a good franchisor and a good partner.
Well, Mark, appreciate your time, appreciate your transparency and walking us through that. So much to learn from that. And I really appreciate that you were willing to share all of that. Mark Cote, the CEO of Backyard Burgers and Wild Wing Cafe. Thanks again.
Thanks, Sam.
That was my interview with Mark Cote of Wild Wing Cafe and Backyard Burgers. So what should you learn from this interview? Here are my 6 takeaways. My first takeaway is that if you hire people with their same skill set, you'll fail miserably. Mark explained how in his career, which he's been at several restaurant companies, he was talking about the various stops that he'd been to along the way and how blessed he is with the people who surround him. And that's not a coincidence. That's not by accident. Mark has had plenty of mentors and people along the way who have given him opportunities to step into leadership positions. And then he extends that offer to others as well. And he says, as he recruits a team to surround him, which he did at Backyard Burgers and Wild Wing Cafe, he selects people with a complementary skill set. As he said, he would fail miserably if it was just the same skill set as him throughout his team. That is a critical thing to have beside you as you go through something like bankruptcy. In fact, I love what Mark said. He said, you can't walk into a battle or a celebration without a team. And when you go through the bankruptcy process, you're going to have your team there beside you going through that process as well. And so you have to pick your team carefully. The bankruptcy process is also not for the faint-hearted, as he went into later on. And he said, hang on, buckle in, you're in for a ride. So similarly, you should have people surrounding you who know what they're doing. Maybe they've been through the process before, or at least that they can handle certain challenges that perhaps are a little bit out of your wheelhouse. Recruit people to fill out your team who have complementary skill sets, not the same skill set as you. My second takeaway is that bankruptcy is about the future more than failure. Now, I told Mark, I confess, I don't know a lot about bankruptcy. It's part of the reason I wanted to talk to Mark. We've heard from so many companies that are filing for bankruptcy in the last couple of years, certainly because of COVID, which is the case with Wild Wing Cafe and Backyard Burgers. And as I hear about more and more companies going through this process, I've just wondered, what is this like? What does it entail? And, for myself, as somebody who doesn't know much about it, of course, I registered bankruptcy as a sign of failure. Many years ago, before I was in this position, I might have even affiliated it with you close up shop and disappear forever. And that's not the case. Yes, bankruptcy is for a company that is in a challenging position financially. There's no way around that. But Mark says you have to take this mindset of thinking about bankruptcy as a way to a better future, not as a way to emerge from failure. And I think that's a good thing to remember. It's a good mindset to keep the future in mind and not necessarily the past and what led you to filing for bankruptcy. Mark points out it's time consuming, it's expensive. Again, it is not for everybody. But sometimes bankruptcy is your last option. If you are in a position where you owe creditors, where you owe vendors, and where there's no other way around it but to file for bankruptcy, sometimes that's the only option for you. But instead of seeing that as the end of the road, think of it as taking care of everything that needs to be taken care of so that you can get to that brighter future. Mark has guided these 2 brands through to a place where he believes they now have that brighter future for them. My third takeaway is that nobody in the bankruptcy process wants you to fail. I was a direct line from Mark. I thought that was a great thing to remember because, again, if you're filing for bankruptcy for your business and you feel like a failure, you feel overwhelmed perhaps, and like there are all these people demanding something from you and disappointed in you and maybe wanting to see you fail. No, Mark says, that's not the case. The people involved in the bankruptcy process, from the attorneys to the financial advisors to others who are a part of it, they want to ensure that you're not going to have to file for bankruptcy again, as Mark said. And they all also want to make sure they can guide you through that process and get you to the other side. People are not rooting for you to fail. Keep that in mind as these people you bring into that process with you. If you find yourself in that situation, don't expect the worst of them. Don't expect that they're looking down their nose at you. expect that they're going to be here to walk beside you and guide you through the process and ensure that everybody gets what they need to get and that they will see you on your way at the other side of it. My fourth takeaway is that you still have to run a smart business during a bankruptcy filing. So Mark, he talked about the importance of listening to franchisees, getting out across the system and listening to the operators of these two chains that he's CEO of, and how important it was to hear them out and to learn more from them about what they expect from the business. And again, I mean, franchisees, here's one of your stakeholders that this bankruptcy filing is important to them because of the future they want to see for their investment. But similarly, they still expect you to run a great restaurant because their skin's in the game. They are running the restaurants. And he explained some of the things that they worked on, from point of sale to, getting customer feedback tools and other investments that they made even as they were going through the bankruptcy process. He also talked about the fact that, they had to really take a good hard look at their food costs and ensure that they weren't sacrificing quality. It could be tempting to just start, throwing out all the, expensive stuff and cutting your quality, finding shortcuts as you're going through a bankruptcy process. But again, if you're going through bankruptcy so that you can have a brighter future for your restaurant, that defeats the purpose. You've got to ensure your restaurant, even in that process, is operating at the best possible quality that it can, so that when you do emerge from bankruptcy, you can hit the ground running. My fifth takeaway is that if you think bankruptcy is in your future, you should start preparing now. I love this look under the hood that Mark gave into the bankruptcy process because, again, if this is something you feel like might be on the horizon for your business, or if you're just curious to know what it entails, he gave so much good practical advice for what you can do to get ahead of it. And part of it is just preparing. He said, there's so much documentation that you need and so much financials and so much that you have to bring to this process with you. And it's time consuming. It blows my mind that, these brands that he took through bankruptcy took 2 years, and that there are other companies out there that go through many, many more years of this bankruptcy process, because it's a lot. There is so much that goes into it. To that end, if you think it's in your future, you should prepare well in advance so that you are best set up for success in that bankruptcy filing. My sixth and final takeaway is that through thick and thin, never lose sight of who you are as a brand. Again, look, if you go through bankruptcy, it would be so easy to just hang your head and to say, I have failed. But the fact of the matter is, you were a viable business because of a brand promise, a great product, a connection with the guest. There are so many reasons why you did succeed and can succeed again. And you can't lose sight of that. Don't just give up. Remember that you've got something good. That's what Mark says. He's Backyard Burgers, Wild Wing Café. He talks about the great experience you get at these restaurants, the great product you get at these restaurants, the fact that they've built this great customer base over many decades in business, and they aim to continue to serve those customers with those great products and experiences in the future. If you just gave up, then what would you have on the other side of this thing? So stay true to who you are. Don't go back on the brand, values and ideals. Stick to it. Circle the wagons, as Mark said. Hunker down, strap in. You'll get through it, and keep one eye on that future because there are good things coming your way. Those are all my takeaways for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe to Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts and leave your feedback. You can also email me at sam.oches@informa.com. Thanks again, and talk to you next week.
55% of Gen Z and millennials say social media reviews are the top reason they try a restaurant, and 73% have visited a restaurant in the last 3 months because of one. Do you have timely reviews working for you? Quick-turn influencer review campaigns from Bell Communication can fill tables fast. Visit bellcommunication.com/influence to learn more.